The Bible is a wonderful collection of various kinds of literature. There are legal instructions, rules of governing, rules for living, but also history and poetry and testimony and song. And the book of Ruth is a good example. It's a love story, a romance novel, a historical novel, and social commentary, all rolled into one. The purpose of the story is to encourage sympathetic feelings for immigrants who put themselves under the protection of Israel's God. And along with the books of Jonah and Isaiah, the book of Ruth promotes the blessings and benefits of foreigners, immigrants in one's land. So the book of Ruth begins in the days when the judges ruled. The story is set in the time after the Hebrews had escaped slavery in Egypt, after the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, after finally returning to the promised land, when the Lord was still ruler and king of the people, and when God would raise up judges, local heroes as needed to address incursions and conflicts with neighboring nations. And as it is told in the book of Ruth, a famine fell upon the land, a common occurrence in those times. Widespread famines dislocate people. The Irish potato famine, beginning in 1845, led to mass immigration of the Irish to Canada and to the United States. And because of the Swedish famine of 1867, 1868, immigration of Swedes to the United States skyrocketed. When there's no food, those who are able will migrate to places where they can eat and survive. The story of Ruth is about such migration, but migration to an enemy nation. An Israelite father took his family to Moab. Moab was a country bordering the land where the Israelites settled. The Israelites had to travel through Moab during their wilderness wanderings between the escape from Egypt, the Exodus, and the entry into the Promised Land. The Israelites, they had to wander through this country of Moab, and the Moabites, the Ammonites, harassed and attacked Israelites along the way. Moab was Israel's enemy. So now we have a story with a moral, with social implications and with political commentary. An Israelite is taking his family to the enemy to find relief and safety. The story of Ruth is about how God brings sworn enemies together, how God's ways and blessings go beyond borders and human restrictions, how God works in people from all kinds of backgrounds and circumstances to achieve God's purpose of salvation and nurture. The storyline is about a family unable to survive the hardships of famine, so they migrate to a place that seems to have food. The family settles there, and sons marry local women, Orpah and Ruth. But the head of the household dies, and his sons die. The mother is left widowed, and her daughters-in-law are widowed too. In all times, but especially then, widows are vulnerable and often impoverished. The three widows no longer have the safety and support of family. Mother Naomi tells her daughters-in-law to return to their Moabite kinsmen to beg their charity, and that she herself will return to her Israelite kinsmen to do the same. And our reading concludes with Ruth clinging to her mother-in-law. It seems there was deep love and strong bonds between the women. Ruth famously declares her dedication to Naomi and to Naomi's God. And Ruth adopts the identity and faith of her mother-in-law and joins the return to their homeland. The rest of the book of Ruth is a romance between Ruth and a wealthy, righteous landowner who looks after her and eventually marries her. They live happily ever after. But even more so, their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and all the world are eventually blessed. And so ends the book. Ruth and Boaz become great-grandparents of Israel's greatest king, King David, and become the ancestors of the world's Savior, Jesus. In this book, we now see that the ancestry of King David and the ancestry of Jesus is of mixed races, of mixed heritage. The moral of the story is the blessing and strength that immigrants and foreigners bring to a nation. The book of Ruth is set in the years between the wilderness wandering and the raising up of Israel's kings. But the style of the writing and the subject matter and the storyline leads biblical scholars to date the actual writing of the book 500 years later, to the time of the Israelites' return from exile in Babylon after a long history of kings had failed them. The book of Ruth was written after Israel was conquered. The government dismantled and people driven from their homeland and foreign empires ruled. And when the conquering empire itself was conquered by another, the Israelites were allowed to return to their homeland. They came back to towns and villages where some of the kinsmen who were left behind had intermarried. Decades of foreign rule will do that. Years of oppression and occupation will crumble local culture and weaken traditions. The identity and religion of the Israelites have become mixed with that of the aliens to the land. The book of Ruth asserts that such intermingling is actually a blessing and a strength. But that was not an opinion widely held. The same time that Ruth was written, the history recorded in the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah was also written. Ezra and Nehemiah are about rebuilding Israel and reestablishing Israelite identity and religion. These books give instruction to abandon the foreigner, to avoid intermarriage, to segregate from foreign influence. In these books, Israelites are to assert their purity in order to survive. They are to stay separated from all that is ritually unclean, including Moabites of other culture and religion. In the words of their leader, "We have broken faith with our God and have married foreign women. Therefore let us make a covenant with our God to put away all these wives and their children." Now, whatever you make of the fairness of this, of the command to divorce foreign wives and disown children and make no provision for their welfare, whatever you make of this, my point is that the Bible itself often contradicts itself. Here we have two accounts from the same period of time addressing the same issue of foreigners intermarrying and dwelling with Israelites. The book of Ruth points out the blessing and benefits of foreigners. The books of Ezra and Nehemiah assert the problems and insist on prohibiting them. So here and in other places, the Bible often presents opposing positions. So what are we to make of this? Is not life like that? Is not reality that two good people with the best intentions and sincere beliefs will see things completely opposite? Will come down on different sides of an issue. Will support opposing candidates. What are we to make of this? Well, for one, I propose that the Bible is not supposed to be an answer book. That all we have to do is flip to the right page and we get the answer we need. The Bible does not give answers, but rather the Bible's purpose is to connect us with God. The Lord does not want blind obedience, but wants engagement with us. And so God gives us the Bible filled with contradictions so that we have to take one side and contend with the other. So that we have to think and pray and ponder and explore the ways of God. So that as we discuss and ponder, God's Holy Spirit has a chance to speak to us. I propose that rather than give answers, God gives topics for discussion. God gives us opposing sides of an issue so that in thinking we connect with God's Spirit. I also believe God gives us opposing sides of an issue so that in discussing them we connect with one another. There are some basic rules for discussing opposing views. There are some things to keep in mind as we confront opposing views. First, just because someone has a different viewpoint or a different political affiliation does not mean that they are an enemy. Opponents do not have to be enemies. Enemies seek to destroy. Opponents seek to contend and thereby grow stronger together. Second, opposite sides still have common ground. At the very least, we are to assume that the other still desires good and wants the same basics of life that we do. Opponents have much in common on which to unite. Third, disagreement is the door to opportunity. Disagreement is that place of learning and growing. The devil's work is to make us fear each other. The work of evil is to build disagreement into a fortress of fear. But disagreement as blessing is a place of growth. Blessing that God's world is bigger than my narrow point of view. Blessing that here is a chance to get to know someone else. Blessing that by engaging with the other, I can improve my own view. Disagreement is blessing. Disagreement is a door to opportunity to consider something larger than ourselves. But for disagreement to bring blessing, certain attitudes and orientation are necessary. One is curiosity. Curiosity is the motivation to even consider an opposing viewpoint. Curiosity sees through the smoke of distrust and suspicion to check out what might be a greater truth. Another attitude is generosity of spirit. A generous spirit is one in which the benefit of the doubt is an automatic response. Generosity of spirit is assuming that the opponent has valid reasons for seeing things the way they do. A generous spirit will allow for the other to express themselves and make themselves understood. Listening is another necessary attitude. Not hearing. Hearing is just enduring noise until you have a chance to speak your mind. But listening is a facet of curiosity. Listening desires to know what and why the other thinks the way they do. Listening desires to know what is behind the position, what experience and values create the other's position. And so listening is the gift of honoring the other enough to understand them. So curiosity, generosity of spirit, and listening are orientations or attitudes that make differences a possible blessing. The Bible takes many contrary positions. Life itself gives us situations of conflicting positions and views. The book of Ruth has a different attitude toward foreigners than do the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. This is God's way to get us to think and to ponder and discuss, to get us to meet God's Spirit as we read the Bible, and to get us to connect with one another. Differences discussed, blessed with greater understanding and deeper community. And through it all, and through all of this conversation and discussion, God makes room, and God welcomes, and God takes part in the very conversation.